The Worldview of Paul Cezanne, A Psychic Interpretation by Jane Roberts, Introduction by Seth. And I want to read to you, before we begin reading the actual body of this work, a paragraph from the introduction. So this is Seth speaking now. I simply want to emphasize the fact that thoughts are living, not passive. They are not collected like rocks. They are more like butterflies. Roberts momentarily then left the framework of her own psychological reality and used Cézanne rather than Roberts as the organizing impetus, so that the contents of the mind were rearranged, and Cézanne's picture of the world was transposed over Roberts' own. So I find that intriguing. Now, here we go. Chapter 11, The Nature of Images and Objects. Entry number 25 from April 1st, 1976, 10 a.m. till 11 a.m. I have a suspicion, never voiced before, that when a painter executes, say, a landscape, using a real one as a model, then changes also occur in the exterior model that are connected with his painting. A field, of course, is never the same, so when an artist begins a painting of one, he comes in on the field's reality at a certain point, like entering a theater in the middle of the second or third act. The action has been happening, but in his painting he begins at a certain point. By painting's end, both artist and field have changed. That much is simple enough. But I have often compared my initial version of a landscape with the landscape as painted, and it seemed that other changes also happened that could not be assessed. A relationship seems to be set up between the artist, painting, and model. Again, a triangular relationship that affects all three. Some kind of unknown sympathetic action or attraction perhaps takes place. Surely the trees and rocks do not know that they are being painted, yet I swear that they are somehow changed as a result of the painting. It's as if the artist's mental images of them, objectified on canvas, are somehow superimposed then upon their physical images, though to an almost imperceptible degree. Does the artist stamp his mental vision upon the real world, altering quite physical conditions, even if minutely? If I use one rock as a model, a rock, say, that sits beneath a tree, but transpose it in my painting to a position somewhat to the right or the left of the tree, the physical rock does not move to the position that I've given it in my painting. Yet, as I compared my landscapes when they were finished, but also through the various stages of completion to the reality that served as model, it did seem to me that indications of such changes occurred. These alterations were not visually apparent in usual terms, yet their mental impression remained in my mind, so that in the real landscape I always mentally saw the rock where I had placed it in my painting. With my eyes open, the rock was in its physical position. When I closed my eyes, the rock would be in the painting's position. Sometimes, though, with my eyes wide open and in good light, I would summon my closed eye mental image at the same time, and then the rock seemed equally valid in either position, even though I knew that only one position was visually true. Yet I am certain, or almost certain, that in some way I cannot explain, I altered the position of the real rock when I changed its placement in my painting. I have seen virtually true scenes, however, with my eyes closed, and could summon in detail the images of paintings I was concerned with. Some of these images were so clear that I would think my eyes were open, though I knew full well that they were closed. I wondered then if sight were really dependent upon eyes, though the tales of blind men makes this seem like a ridiculous question to consider. And certainly, the body's coordination is dependent to a large degree upon sight. But I wondered if there were perhaps two kinds of sight, one necessary for physical manipulation and tuned into the real world, which would perceive the real position of the rock, and one beneath, a kind of unconscious seeing, unknown to the physical eyes, that perceived motions and shapes upon which usual physical perception rested. An artist, observing constantly, would be in an excellent position, of course, to stumble upon such hidden relationships. And it may be that the artist, more than any other person, utilizes both kinds of vision without knowing it. I know that these two kinds of vision merge with the physical one predominating, for the following has also happened to me on occasion when walking in a field that I have painted in the past, and when my thoughts were straying, I would look up in surprise, realizing that I had been seeing the landscape as it was physically, but also seeing it with all the variations that I had made in it on my canvas. Once, absent-mindedly walking along, I went out of my way to walk around a small rock on the path, only to stop a few seconds later in wonderment and dismay. I turned around and I looked back. Sure enough, the rock I had walked around was not there. It was a rock I had placed there in one of my paintings in that exact spot. Luckily, I did not stub my toe on it, I thought, overwhelmed with amusement when I discovered my mistake. But I had been seeing the painted landscape and the real one, making constant adjustments without knowing it, walking the quite real path, avoiding the real rocks until something happened. What brought me up short was the inappropriate physical reaction to the rock that belongs to the other inner vision. At other times, and once, when I was in a period of ill health, I purposely tried visual experiments of the same nature. I let my thoughts stray as I walked along, until now and then, at least, I would catch myself once more walking in the real landscape, and in the landscape with all the variations placed in it by my paintings, and seeing, if only for an instant, the imagined and real images at the same time. Yet, automatically, I only avoided the real rocks and walked without thinking through the other objects placed in my path that looked, if for only a moment, quite as real. I recognized those other objects in all cases. They were familiar, each of them belonging in a painting of the same scene. Sometimes they were placed very close to their models, so that the real one seemed to blur out in space as the two merged. Sometimes the real model and the painted version would be quite far apart, as per the changes I had made. I was in no fear of losing my mind, but instead was seized with excitement, feeling that the nature of visual perception was far more wondrous than I had ever supposed. When I tried too hard for such effects, nothing happened. But I became convinced that there are two kinds of vision, only one requiring physical action or manipulation. Only if this is so, why do blind people not see clear images with the inner vision, even if the exterior vision is defective? Or maybe the final physical picture, the living landscape, involves layers or levels of visual perception in the same way that a painting is composed of underpaintings and underlayers, each one necessary, though only the top one predominates.